Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it's an honor to join in the tributes today to a remarkable human being, a royal, and someone who cared deeply about Canada and the nature and the wildlife of this country. It was a hot June day in 1987 when I was walking across a farmer's field in Saskatchewan and had the huge honor of meeting His Royal Highness, the Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. He was performing the kinds of duties that I think he loved the most, which was helping to increase public awareness and support for endangered wildlife. We were in a field of a farmer, I remember his name, Grant Fallman. He was one of the first farmers in Saskatchewan to help with something called Operation Burrowing Owl to try to preserve this very endangered bird, which sadly since 1987 has become even more endangered. But His Royal Highness was there in his very strong engagement, as you've just heard from the member from Cowichan, Malahat, Langford, in the work of the World Wildlife Fund. His Royal Highness was there to increase awareness and increase support. His tour of Saskatchewan in June 1987 included the stop at Grant Fallman's family farm, as well as going to Last Mountain Lake to see the endangered cranes there, the whooping cranes, sandhill cranes. But what I remark about the most when I think back on that trip was His Royal Highness's extraordinary interest in detail. He had a very sharp eye and he didn't miss a thing. I'll give you two brief examples. We were walking across the field and he spotted a bit of desiccated excrement. And he stooped down to pick it up and examine it. And he handed it to a wildlife biologist who was with us in the field and said, "What do you suppose this is? What animal do you suppose this?" And the biologist looked and said, "Well, I don't know, maybe it's a coyote." So tossed it away casually. His Royal Highness said, "Excuse me, you don't know what it is and you're going to discard it? Surely we should look into it." So His Royal Highness, the biologist scampered and found the piece of desiccated excrement, took it with him and promised His Royal Highness he would study it. Nothing escaped his attention. We were walking through the field. I was there in my capacity as a policy advisor to the Federal Minister of Environment at the time. And in holding the burrowing owl, my boss had the burrowing owl relieve himself in the minister's hands. And so I very discreetly passed my boss a piece of old paper napkin from my purse so he could wipe his hands off. Somewhat later in the day, it was my turn to be presented. And Tom McMillan, my boss, turned to His Royal Highness and said, "I want to present you a member of my staff." And she, at which point His Royal Highness said, "I know, she provides you with Kleenexes." Didn't miss a thing. I think the sharpest eyes I've ever seen and absolutely attentive to detail. He was there also fundraising for Ducks Unlimited to protect our migratory waterfowl and protect wetlands and prairie potholes. He was there in his capacity, as I mentioned, with World Wildlife Fund. He was president of World Wildlife Fund International from 1981 till 1996. This is not a small degree of commitment. He was the vice president of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature from 1981 to 1988. He was dedicated in a way that was more than show. It was not just the occasional event. He went to 50 different countries advocating for wildlife and for preservation of key areas of ecosystems. As a matter of fact, His Royal Highness, Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, contributed to saving Canadian old growth in the campaign that took place in those very years to protect the area that is now Guayahanas National Park Reserve in Haida Gwaii. As member for Cowichan, Malahat, Langford referenced that Prince Philip was known for the occasional gaffe, but I think we need to say an enormous debt of gratitude to peoples around the world, to wildlife around the world, to endangered ecosystems around the world, that this was a member of the royal family whose sense of duty was extraordinary, but his inspiration and his love of the natural world was second to none. I join with all of my colleagues today in expressing the deep condolences of the people of Canada to Her Royal Highness, our Queen, Queen Elizabeth II. This is an enormous loss to her and to the whole royal family. We express our condolences, and I personally want to express my thanks. What an extraordinary honor to have met someone so dedicated to wildlife, wild spaces, and the wilderness of Canada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.